When the Chinese billionaire mocked the black waiter, and no one expected this insane reply, the room was filled with an electric tension, palpable and thick, as the clinking of glass met the faint laughter of patrons inside the glittering restaurant. The walls gleamed with rich mahogany and gold accents, a perfect stage for the drama about to unfold. In the center, under the soft glow of chandeliers, sat a Chinese billionaire, his cold gaze scanning the room. He radiated power, confidence, and aura that made even seasoned businessmen shrink away. But his eyes stopped on one person, a young black waiter, nervous and fumbling with a tray. A cruel smirk twisted on the billionaire's lips. He raised an eyebrow, mocking the waiter's threadbare uniform. "Is this a joke?" he sneered, his voice oozing disdain. Gasps swept through the nearby tables, disbelief hanging in the air like smoke. How could he? The waiter's hands trembled, sweat beading on his brow. His heart raced like a freight train, pounding with rising humiliation. The room was suddenly silent, the tension palpable. People leaned in, eyes wide, sensing the drama at the center, a classic battle of humility versus arrogance. Then, something remarkable happened. The waiter, fighting against his fear, stood taller. With a deep breath, he shot back a response. But it wasn't just words. It was a revelation that sent a ripple of gasps throughout the crowd. It was as if the air crackled with magic miracles hidden in the mundane. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The tension thickened again, a heavy fog settling over the diners. Felt as a tightness in their chests, the collective breath holding as they exchanged nervous glances. Would the billionaire retaliate? Would the waiter follow through? Anticipation surged like a wave. Suddenly, the waiter's eyes flashed with a brilliant intensity that lit up the room. The response to the billionaire was no longer just a comeback. It felt like a stand against the very foundation of prejudice. The crowd leaned in, hungry for every word, aware they were witnessing the birth of something deeper. But just then, a loud crash echoed through the restaurant, a moment of chaos that shattered the silence, leaving everyone reeling. Was it a warning? An omen of the storm brewing just beneath the surface? The moment was hanging, pregnant with possibility. We had only glimpsed what could come next, leaving hearts racing and minds spinning. What would happen when the billionaire realized the battle was far from over? What secret did the waiter hold that could turn the tide? And as the tiny flames of hope flickered against the dark, one question loomed large. What happens when you push back against the powerful? The crash echoed like a clap of thunder, freezing every soul in the restaurant mid-breath. It had come from behind the bar. A stack of expensive glassware had toppled off the edge, shattering into 1,000 glistening shards. The noise pulsed through the crowd, scattering the brittle tension like leaves scattered by a gust of wind. Amid the chaos, the waiter, still grappling with the weight of the billionaire's mockery, felt the periphery of his world blurring and twisting. He wasn't merely a server anymore. He had thrust himself into the spotlight, and all eyes remained rooted on him, unsure of what to expect next. The billionaire's gaze narrowed, his arrogance faltering momentarily as he took in the glass-strewn floor and the waiter's unyielding posture. His expression hardened, and he leaned forward, fists clenching around the edges of the table. "You think this is some game?" he spat, his voice low and threatening. The diners gasped again, but this time, a sense of morbid curiosity hung heavily in the air. They were barraged by a fear shadowed with anticipation. The waiter didn't flinch. He felt an unexpected surge of adrenaline, a rush that intensified his self-worth. "No, sir," he replied, voice steady, "but I think you're playing it too close to the sun." As the words left his lips, a ripple of murmurs flooded the room. It was an unexpected twist and uprising, not against just him, but against the very ideals of entitlement and superiority that the billionaire represented. The patrons' expressions shifted slowly from shock, to something resembling admiration. Whispers floated through the tables like whispers of the wind. Could one man really stand against such wealth and power? The billionaire visibly bristled, his usual calm replaced with a simmering fury. He motioned for the restaurant owner, a nervous, frail man who had been watching from the shadows. "Get rid of him," the billionaire commanded, his voice laced with venom. The owner's face paled, torn between his respectable establishment and the might of wealth personified before him. "Please, sir," just doing his the owner began before being cut off by a glare that could freeze hell over, but the waiter cut into the tension again. "And if you don't value kindness or humility, then perhaps you should reconsider who truly serves whom." A silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. The waiter's heart raced even faster. He could feel the beating of others' hearts echoing his own. Suddenly, a courageous woman at a nearby table stood, raising her glass. "You deserve respect, just like anyone else." Her words broke the dam, igniting a chorus of cheers and shouts in support of the waiter. Wives clutched their husbands' arms, while wealthy businessmen exchanged glances, bewildered yet impressed. The billionaire's face darkened, the creeping wrath hiding behind the veneer of wealth and control. The stakes had shifted. It was no longer a simple insult. This was a challenge, and he wasn't about to back down. As chaos erupted, with people rising to their feet in support of the waiter, tension crackled in the air like the calm before the storm. The billionaire clenched his teeth, and just as he opened his mouth to unleash hell, a distant siren wailed, growing louder and louder, an omen that something explosive was about to happen. The question hung like a dark cloud. Would the billionaire retaliate, unleashing the full might of his empire? What path had the waiter just embarked upon with his defiance? And as the flames of rebellion flickered, one thought screamed through the crowd: what would happen next when power meets the resolution of the overlooked? The atmosphere shifted almost instantaneously as the blaring sirens pierced through the chaos, slicing through the fervor like a knife. Patrons exchanged anxious glances, the cheers for the waiter hanging in the air like an unfinished song. It was uncertain whether those sirens heralded the police or something far more sinister. The billionaire kept his icy glare fixed on the waiter, his fist still tightening. "You think this is a game, don't you? You've made a mistake." The words dripped with malice, each syllable sharpening the tension in the room. The waiter felt his heart racing, a drumbeat echoing in his ears. He couldn't let fear slip through the cracks. Not now, not when the tide was turning. He took a deep breath, his voice rising above the growing disarray. "It's not a mistake to stand up for what's right. It's not a game when lives are at stake." The conviction in his words caused another ripple, transforming the collective gasps into murmurs of agreement. But the billionaire was unfazed, contempt twisting his features. "You think they care about you? They're here to eat and flaunt their wealth, not to fight your battles." His tone dripped with disdain, casting a shadow over the camaraderie building in the crowd. Yet, one by one, diners began to shuffle closer to the waiter's side, their faces lit with determination. It was a slow convergence, like a storm gathering strength. The restaurant owner, still paralyzed in his corner, finally stepped forward, his voice shaky but resolute. "You're wrong. People do care. This isn't just about service, it's about decency." The billionaire's eyes narrowed, his composure slipping. The anger simmering beneath the surface was palpable, and for a moment, it looked as though he was about to explode. Suddenly, the wail of approaching sirens intensified, pulling attention away from the immediate confrontation. As patrons reached for their phones, capturing the moment on social media, the atmosphere twisted again. Could the police arrive in time to control a situation spiraling out of their grasp? The door swung open, and two imposing figures stepped inside, uniformed officers, surveying the chaotic scene. "Madam, sir, what seems to be the trouble here?" One officer's booming voice cut through the tension, and the crowd fell momentarily quiet. It was the billionaire who stepped forward, feigning an air of control. "This server has caused unrest in my establishment." "Unrest, you say?" The officer locked eyes with the waiter, a flicker of recognition passing through him. "We just received a call about a potential disturbance involving threats." "Care to explain?" The waiter's pulse quickened. This was his chance to make his stand. "Sir, I was merely defending myself against attack," he began, his voice unwavering as he recounted the humiliation he'd faced, the demeaning comments, and how that tension had led to this moment. As he spoke, the crowd leaned closer, their attentiveness giving him strength. In that instant, he wasn't just a waiter, but a voice for the invisible, the dismissed. The billionaire glared, caught in a web of his own making. "What will you do now?" one brave diner whispered, emboldened by the waiter's speech. The question hung heavy, weighty like the tension in the air. The officer, still sizing up the situation, turned to the billionaire. "It's your word against his. But if needed, I'm sure we can sort through the documentation, employee files, even video footage," he cautioned, a cryptic threat tinged with promise. "Wait, what?" The billionaire sputtered, now visibly shaken, his empire momentarily trembling. With the foundation of what he thought was immovable crumbling, every eye turned to him. Would he fight back or retreat? As the patrons held their breath, an incredible tension began to coil in their chests. Drawing nearer, what would the billionaire choose? And more importantly, what would happen when the balance of power teetered on the brink? The silence hung heavily in the air, a taut string straining against the weight of anticipation. The billionaire's face morphed from anger to bewilderment, and for a split second, he looked vulnerable. The crowd watched, breathless, as if they were witnessing the fall of a giant, a dream unraveling before their eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" he blustered, trying to regain his composure. "You think you can just— I think it's time for a change," the waiter interjected, his voice rising above the murmur of the crowd. The diners nodded, their faces alight with solidarity, a charge spreading like wildfire. They weren't just spectators anymore. They were part of this moment, gripped by a shared conviction. The billionaire's fingers twitched. His empire was built on control, on manipulating people and situations to his will. He stepped forward, his towering presence filling the restaurant. "You're interfering with business, and I will not let this go unpunished." "A punishment for standing up against you?" The waiter shot back, passion igniting his words. "What's next?" Shutting down every voice that dares to speak the truth. As shouts erupted among the crowd, the officer glanced between the two men, his brow furrowed. "Sir, it seems there's more to this situation than meets the eye. If you have nothing to hide, we'd like to review the security footage." His tone was steady, but the implication was clear. He wouldn't let intimidation stifle justice. The billionaire's eyes darkened, calculating and cold. The glimmer of desperation seen before vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. "You want footage? I'll show you footage of whatever you need to see. But it won't be what you expect." A nervous ripple coursed through the crowd. What did he mean by that? They were already weary from the tension that had engulfed them. The uncertainty was gnawing at them like a dog on a bone, leaving raw nerves exposed. "I think it's important we clear the air," the billionaire continued, his voice low but laced with threat. "You meddling people are playing with fire. This is a professional establishment with high stakes. You don't know what it's like to lose everything." Anger stirred among the diners. "And you don't know what it's like to lose your dignity," one woman shouted back, her voice trembling with rage. The other patrons rallied, emboldened, erupting in agreement and chanting, "Dignity! Dignity!" Just then, a flicker of movement at the back of the restaurant caught the waiter's eye. A figure cloaked in shadows slipped inside, unnoticed by the crowd but utterly captivated by the unfolding drama. The officer caught it too. With a nod to his partner, they slowly moved towards the back, eyes narrowed, alert. "What's this?" The billionaire turned, frustration and confusion mixing in his gaze. "Who's that? Get out." And then, with a single flamboyant motion, the figure stepped into the light, silhouetted against the chaos. The crowd gasped collectively, breath held. A celebrity? An activist? The identity was veiled, but the aura of authority was undeniable. "Enough games," the figure said, their voice sharp and commanding. "You don't control this narrative anymore." The tension escalated, a palpable electricity that crackled in the air, and the waiter's heart raced. Who was this new player? What were they about to reveal? What had the billionaire hidden beneath his polished facade? The room pulsed with uncertainty, and one thought echoed in the din. Something big was about to go down. Every patron wondered, as the clock ticked down, was it too late to turn back? The stranger stood there, commanding attention as the murmurs swelled. The tension was so thick, you could slice it with a knife. The billionaire's expression twisted disbelief mixed with fury. In the glow of the chandelier, the mystery figure, cloaked in an aura of authority, took a step closer. "I know all about your empire," the figure said, voice low but filled with an undeniable power. "It's about time the truth came to light." Gasps erupted. The crowd leaned in, straining to hear every word. The waiter felt a rush of hope, mixed with bewilderment. Could this be the pivotal moment they had all been waiting for? What truth? The billionaire shot back, tone dripping with mockery. "What could you possibly have that could harm me?" "More than you think," the figure replied coolly. The spotlight shifted ever so slightly, revealing their features. A moment of silence followed, the kind that rings in your ears, heavy with comprehension. The crowd recognized the face, body language shifting from confusion to dawning realization. Media mogul, activist, and fierce critic of corrupt power, it was Naomi Ward, the one who had spent years dismantling the facade of the elite. A collective rush of excitement mingled with anxiety buzzed in the air. "Naomi," the waiter whispered, eyes wide. Could she really bring the billionaire down? "You think the world doesn't know your dirty little secrets?" Naomi continued, her tone unwavering. "The properties you've seized at gunpoint, the family shattered beneath your greed? It's all a flick of your finger away from exposure." The billionaire's bravado faltered for just a heartbeat. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his fists clenched like loaded springs. "You think you can threaten me and get away with it?" he ground out, fury suffusing his voice. "Oh, this isn't a threat. This is a promise," Naomi countered, with a steady confidence that pulsed through the room. "Your empire is built on sand, and every lie you've spun is unraveling before your eyes." Around her, the crowd shifted, emboldened. Their low murmurs morphed into brave declarations, fists raised in solidarity. "Expose him," someone shouted, igniting a fire that spread like wildfire. "What do you say, billion-dollar tyrant?" Naomi pressed, her icy glare unyielding. "Let the people know. Let them see what you've done, the real you." His mask cracking, the billionaire's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. His empire, a towering fortress built on manipulation, trembled. "You're making a mistake, Naomi. You don't know who you're dealing with," he hissed, his composure faltering further. Fingers fidgeting, the officer watching their exchange now stood frozen, a storm brewing in his mind. Was this the moment to intervene, to enforce the law? Or perhaps something deeper, more sinister was unfolding? Just as Naomi opened her mouth to unleash her next words, a shrill alarm pierced the tension, and lights flickered ominously. The billionaire's eyes narrowed as panic flushed through the room. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice rising, sending shockwaves through the crowd. "Brace yourselves," Naomi warned, as the chaos began to unfold. The walls felt like they were closing in, a frantic mob forming around them, seeking answers, seeking a chance to escape from the storm brewing. Then, suddenly, a figure in a tactical vest surged through the doorway. The officer's heart raced. "This is a police matter." And without hesitation, the billionaire raised a trembling finger toward Naomi, his eyes wide with betrayal and fury. You orchestrated this." Naomi's expression steeled, unflinching in the whirlwind of accusations. Had she really set something so destructive in motion? As tensions flared, and the forgotten echoes of power struggles surged, one question loomed: could they all survive what was about to combust? Just then, a woman's frantic scream shattered the atmosphere, igniting a new wave of panic. What secrets lay beneath the surface? And were they ready for the fallout? The scream echoed like a shattered glass, slicing through the suffocating panic. The crowd erupted into chaos, a sea of bodies surging backward, seeking refuge from the impending storm. Naomi's heart raced as she scanned the room. People stumbled, tripping over one another, desperate to escape the unhinged energy that had spiraled around her declaration. She felt the weight of their fear settling heavily on her shoulders. "Get out," she shouted, her voice fierce, fighting to cut through the haze of confusion. But the frantic crowd just surged further. The officer in the tactical vest pushed forward, waving his arms. "Everyone, calm down. I need you to back up." His muscular presence was supposed to reassure, but even he was swallowed by the tidal wave of panic. The billionaire smirked, catching Naomi's gaze. "Look at them, Ward. You've just made them lose all sense." No one will support you when they're scared out of their minds. His smugness was palpable, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes, betraying a crack in his confident facade. Naomi clutched her stomach, angry while flooding her throat. He was right, and she hated him for it. The essence of her movement relied on these people, their courage to fight against a man like him. They're not scared. They're angry. She shot back. Though her voice wavered, a flash of light startled everyone as the emergency lights flickered on, bathing the grand hall in a sickly red hue. Naomi squeezed through the throngs of bodies, find the woman whose scream had pierced the chaos. There she was, a young girl no older than 15, curled on the ground, her eyes wide with terror, hands covering her ears. Hey. Naomi knelt beside her, grounding the explosive atmosphere with a soft urgency. It's okay. You're safe. Just breathe with me. The crowd began to settle as her soothing voice broke through the fear, but the billionaire caught another wave of boldness. You think you can save everyone here? You're a fool. Naomi lifted her chin, meeting his defiance head-on. I'm not saving anyone. I'm telling the truth. If we keep fighting against people like you, change will come. You can't own these people's fear forever. Suddenly, a thudding sound reverberated from the back of the room. All eyes turned to see two more officers charging in, guns drawn. Freeze. The room tensed again, pulse racing, the atmosphere electric with dread. The billionaire went pale, eyes darting to Naomi again, seeking an ally where there were none. You've provoked them. He spat, panic cracking through his cultivated poise. And you're about to pay the price, Naomi replied, rising to her feet, her voice steady. Frustration turned into resolve. She took a step closer to the riotous officer, sensing the shift in control. Back everyone up, or we'll start making arrests. One of the officers warned, voice booming. The tension suffocated them all, but Naomi refused to back down. This was her moment to expose the truth. Do it. Let the world see what happens when a man like him feels his power slipping away, she challenged, voice fierce. Would she really have them all arrested? No. But the danger of speaking such words hung in the air like a ripe fruit ready to fall. Just then, an explosion echoed outside, a blast of chaotic noise that shattered the already trembling atmosphere. A window exploded as glass and debris flew across the room, sending shards scattering into the crowd. Move, the officers shouted amid the confusion. And suddenly, Naomi knew. This wasn't just about a billionaire anymore. This was a fight for survival, drawing lines in the sand on who could rise from the ashes of corruption. As chaos unfolded, a question lingered in her mind. Who was truly the puppet master behind this web of deceit, and what would it take to bring them down for good? The air thickened with dust and fear as the crowd surged like a wounded animal, desperate to flee the chaos. It was a frenzy of bodies, a dance of survival, but Naomi stood firm at the center of it all. The screams, the shouts, the clashing of metal, it tangled together in a symphony of horror. Get the girl to safety, she yelled, pointing toward the young girl still huddled on the floor, frozen in her terror. Naomi's voice fought through the chaos, and she watched as two officers rushed forward, scooping the girl into their arms. The child clung on to them, her breath hitching, eyes wide with shock. Naomi turned her gaze to the billionaire, who now stood with stained shirt cuffs and a blank expression. He was no longer the towering man confident in his empire. Now, he appeared smaller somehow, vulnerable. You're losing control, aren't you? She taunted, emboldened by the chaos around them. His glare was like ice, cutting through the panic. This is all your fault, he hissed. But even in his anger, she saw the beginnings of an unraveling. That a second explosion thundered outside, shaking the very foundation of the building. The walls quaked as dust rained down like confetti, and Naomi took a step back, instinctively protecting her face from the debris. The crowd screamed, echoing the raw panic that seeped into every corner. With the officers struggling to maintain order, Naomi seized the moment. She clenched her fists, her fingertips digging into her palms. We need to rally. Now. A flicker of determination danced in her spirit as she raised her voice above the din. Listen to her. An older man shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. She's right. We can't let them take our rights. More voices joined him, rising in fervor, rekindling the fading hope in Naomi's chest. The billionaire's mask was slipping further, his facade cracking as he absorbed their words. You think they fight for a lost cause? He sneered, but the edge of desperation licked at his tone. Surely they fight for their freedom, Naomi shot back, heart racing. You can't hold people down forever. Suddenly, a rattle of footsteps echoed in the hall, and Naomi turned to see a group of masked figures bursting through the shattered doors, their faces obscured. Terror swept through the crowd once more, and a collective gasp echoed, breaths caught in throats. Down on the ground, one of the figures yelled, brandishing a weapon that gleamed ominously under the flickering lights. Naomi's heart pounded in her chest. These were not just officers or bystanders anymore. They were something darker, and they had come to enforce chaos rather than restore order. In a split second, Naomi realized the true danger wasn't just the billionaire, nor the unrest igniting among the crowd. It was this new threat that had invaded their sanctuary, weaponized fury against them. Everyone, get behind me, she cried out, instinctively stepping forward. It was reckless, but her instincts screamed to protect those around her. The desperation in the room was palpable, and the tension thickened like a looming storm that as frightened faces turned toward her. A wave of resolve washed over Naomi. Whatever barrage was about to come, she would stand her ground. But just when it seemed hope would flicker anew, one of the masked figures turned toward the billionaire, a smirk playing on their lips. You're welcome for the distraction, they said, voice low and mocking. Naomi's stomach dropped as confusion reigned. Was this all premeditated? Were the explosions and chaos a part of something larger? As the dialogue between the masked figure and the billionaire unfolded, Naomi's question intensified. Would she even remember the fight for survival once the puppet masters revealed their strings? In that eye of the storm, she felt the winds shift again, a deeper, darker revelation lurking just out of sight, but it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was a fight for truth, a fight that could drag everyone under before they could ever rise above it. The tension in the air became electric as the masked figure's gaze flicked between the billionaire and the crowd. Naomi felt the weight of every heart around her. Time stretched, punctuated by the frantic pounding of her heart. What the hell is happening? She whispered to herself, fear racing through her veins. Move, shouted another masked figure, pushing through the crowd, shoving people to the ground. The chaos swelled again. In a space that moments ago felt alive with the flicker of hope, despair was a creeping shadow. Stay behind me, Naomi yelled, eyes darting towards the exits, gauging the best escape routes. The crowd pressed in tight, human bodies jostling, panic morphing into something more violent as instinct took over. The billionaire, now a mere resource in the predator-prey dance unfolding, stared at the group of masked figures with wide eyes. You can't do this. He sounded more frightened than angry, the balance of power shifting beneath him like quicksand. They had become the storm, and he was caught in its center. The lead masked figure stepped closer, weapon gleaming, a smile creeping across their mouth. Oh, but we can. This was all part of the plan, billionaire. Did you really think you were in control? The voice twisted with mockery that sent chills down Naomi's spine. Glimmers of recognition crossed her mind. This was all a setup. The explosions, the chaos, it had been meticulously executed to draw attention away, to obliterate the thin veneer of order. Each thought spiraled in her head, threatening to drown her in despair. Are you working with him? The question tore from Naomi's lips, desperation tinging her voice. The masked figure paused, then chuckled, the kind of laughter that sent a shiver through her core. Sweet girl, we're all working towards the same goals. But it's time he learns he's not so untouchable. The figure gestured, and a surge of adrenaline propelled Naomi forward. She couldn't let them achieve their goals. The crowd shuffled nervously, their breaths low and shaky, as the figures drew nearer, merging with the sunlight penetrating the dust-laden glass. Get ready to fight back, Naomi shouted, trying to rally the people around her. It was like spitting in the wind. Dread loomed in their eyes. The billionaire remained mute, frozen in realization, and it was beginning to dawn on everyone involved that they were merely pawns in a much larger game. Fate's a funny thing, isn't it? One of the masked figures continued, stepping right into the billionaire's personal space. With your empire so coveted, yet here you are, crumbling like the dust you've accumulated. An officer, who had been watching the spectacle, took a step forward. "You're not taking anyone else." His voice boomed, but doubt laced through it. "Stand down. You'll wish you had," another figure warned, leveling the weapon at the officer. In that instant, despair shifted to resolve within Naomi. She reached out to one of the officers, pulling him closer. "We can't just stand here. We need a plan." Her breath came in ragged gasps, but determination anchored her feet. "Look, we can rally the crowd. If we stand together and fight." He looked around, then back at her, uncertainty flooding his eyes. But before he could voice his concerns, another explosion rattled the windows above. The floor trembled beneath them, dust falling like snow. "Now," shouted Naomi, her voice rising above the clamor. "Follow me, together." She bolted toward the nearest masked figure, heart thundering, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Hope peeked around the edges of despair, each terrified face igniting Naomi's spirit. The crowd reluctantly surged forward, but not everyone would follow. Would fear hold them back? Uncertainty swirled among the shifted bodies, each gasp rippling through like a domino waiting to fall. In the chaos, the billionaire remained behind, lost in the upheaval. Naomi's eyes flickered back to him, and as the masked figures turned their focus, the realization crashed into her: what would she need to sacrifice to ignite rebellion against their looming tyranny? As her courage swelled, Naomi couldn't help but wonder, could they truly rise together, or would the darkness snuff out their light before it even had a chance to shine? The question lingered, unanswered, spinning in the chaotic air around her. Naomi's pulse raced as she surged into the line of masked figures. She felt the world around her blur, reduced to the crunch of footsteps and the echo of panicked breaths. Each advance felt like a restraint, the crowd a mix of fear and confusion, reluctant to follow. A woman beside her stumbled, tripping over a fallen chair. Naomi reached for her. "Get up. We can't stop." The urgency in her voice felt foreign but vital, a tether to sanity amidst the madness. The officer hesitated, calculating. "We can't match their firepower," he shouted over the rising clamor. "Then we'll use the element of surprise," Naomi exclaimed, grabbing a flimsy display stand and lifting it high. She spun toward the crowd. "We distract. We evade. Together." More people began to rally around her, but several still clung to their fear, uncertain whether to embrace action or retreat. From the corner of her eye, Naomi spotted a small exit, a flickering light indicating it may lead to safety. Could they reach it in time? "Follow me," she screamed, pushing past masked figures now locked in a tense standoff with the officer and a few brave souls. The lead assailant, noticing the shift, turned with rage. "You think you can escape?" The tone was venomous, filled with a promise of violence. But Naomi was already in motion. She darted toward the flickering light, dragging others with her, hearts pounding like a war drum. The sound of footsteps echoed. Behind them the masked figures scrambled, weapons raised. "Cover me," yelled the officer as he dove for cover. Bullets rang out, the sharp cracks ringing like thunder in her ears. Adrenaline spiked, time twisted and distorted. Naomi turned for a moment, catching a glimpse of the billionaire trying desperately to rise from the ground. Confusion etched across his face, and in that instant, Naomi felt a flicker of sympathy. He was trapped, just like everyone else. They were all at the mercy of this storm. "Keep moving," she urged, pulling her focus back to the exit. Gripping the display stand for defense, she led the charge toward the narrow opening. The crowd wound like a growing serpent, drawn to her pulsating courage. But chaos erupted again. Jagged shouts and the wild crackle of weapons filled the air. "Where do you think you're going?" one masked figure shouted, voice harsh and dripping with disdain. Naomi's heart sank as she got closer to the exit. She felt the heat behind her, the glint of metal, and the depth of malevolence threatening to swallow her whole. They needed one more push, a moment of defiance. "What are we waiting for?" She turned to the crowd. "Fight back. This isn't just about survival. It's a chance to break free." Something snapped in the crowd. A wave of resolve surged as those who once hesitated began to move forward, together. The officer bellowed, "Let us show them we are not weak." A collective roar erupted. Naomi pushed through, adrenaline surging, every heartbeat a beat of defiance. As she reached the exit, The sound of smashing glass shattered from behind. She turned to see a masked figure's head whip around towards them, eyes narrowing enraged. In that moment of distraction, Naomi charged through the opening, smacking into the cool air outside just as a flash of fire erupted inside. Her breath caught in her throat, shock rippling through her. The looming question hung in the air. Could their newfound defiance withstand the full force of the storm? Naomi steadied herself and turned. The chaos inside threatened to spill out, an impending wave of doom. We need to regroup. Now. As she scanned the faces of both friends and strangers, a chill traveled down her spine. Because even outside, the storm was still brewing and tokens of betrayal lurked closer than she had ever imagined. What hidden truths would they discover when the dust eventually settled? The chaos erupted once more. Naomi stood firm just outside the restaurant, her breath shallow as she glanced back at the tumultuous struggle that still raged inside. The explosive confrontation didn't just shake the building. It tore apart the fabric of the lives that had converged within those walls. "Everyone, together!" she shouted, her voice piercing through the shrill echoes of panic. With each moment, the resolve of those around her hardened, unshackling the fear that threatened to overwhelm them. The urgency of the situation pressed against their hearts like a vice. They couldn't just linger in the shadows. This was a moment for action, for voicing their truth. The officer, recovering from his initial shock, stepped out to join her side. "We need to secure the perimeter. Make sure everyone is accounted for." His voice was a steady force, galvanizing strength in the crowd. They formed a barrier between themselves and the unfolding chaos. Naomi felt the tug of responsibility. She was no longer just a voice. She was leading this fray, putting herself before the confused and terrified. They needed to come together, to unify their fear into something more powerful, collective action fueled by a shared hunger for justice. Inside, the billion-dollar titan slithered away from the fray, desperation twisting his features. He grasped at anyone in his way, throwing words like weapons, threats, and accusations slipped through gritted teeth. But as the noise from outside mounted, the storm of rebellion beckoned closer. "Listen," Naomi shouted, rallying the once terrified dining patrons who now stood bewildered just outside the restaurant entrance. "They want to silence us. They want us to crumble. But look around. You are stronger than their greed. Stand now or fall forever." In an electrifying moment, hands began to rise. Voices joined together in a battle hymn against injustice. The cracked images of the well-dressed elite huddled against the wall were juxtaposed with outstretched hands of hope. The billionaire's reign had met its match. Then, something miraculous happened. One by one, patrons from the restaurant charged out, emboldened by Naomi's courage. People whose names adorned buildings, wealth etched into their very beings. They broke ranks, joining the movement, ready to reclaim their dignity. Fear became strength. Each person pushed through to the forefront with raw urgency. "Join us," one voice shouted, followed by another. "We will not be silenced. We will stand for what is right." Their collective declaration boomed through the streets, reverberating off buildings, echoing strength and determination. The billionaire peered from the facade, a mixture of chaos and disbelief palpable in the air. Was he truly witnessing the very empire he had built begin to falter? As Naomi faced him again, a silent call hung between them, a challenge, a reckoning. "Your greed only breeds weakness," she roared, conviction coursing through her blood. "The truth doesn't cower, it rises. And we rise with it." Just then, the cacophony of sirens blared into the night, police vehicles lighting up the corners of the street. Those officers now moved with purpose toward the restaurant, ready to restore order, but Naomi's voice remained a clear beacon, directing the shift from discord to harmony. "Together, stand united," she urged as the figures of officers began to assemble alongside her, an army humbled by the volume of the people. And just like that, the billionaire saw the tide shift. The whispers, the murmurs, the strength of the united, they pulsed around him like a heartbeat he could never emulate. In that instant, he realized the true power of solidarity. The masked figures, cast as the villains in this tumultuous, rich tapestry of life reborn, retreated to the shadows, realizing the storm they had unleashed had spiraled out of their control. They were outnumbered, outmatched, as the last remaining shards of chaos receded into the background. Finally, hope flickered in the hearts of the gathered crowd. Out of pain had come a collective awakening. Naomi stepped back, glancing at the crowd, the diverse faces reflecting the burden they had all carried silently for far too long. Tears filled her eyes as she let the enormity of the moment wash over her. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to herself, but loud enough for those around to hear. "Together, we're unstoppable." Another voice echoed from the throng, and it was met with a murmur of agreement, a shared spirit that resonated like a battle cry throughout the streets. As dawn broke over the horizon, the sun glinted off shattered glass, reminding them of what had transpired. A weight lifted off their shoulders. They could stand, united, refusing to be muzzled. In this new chapter of rebellion, they were no longer invisible. They were catalysts for change, each heartbeat resonating with the promise of a brighter future forged through unity, strength, and, most importantly, the rejection of silence. The battle was just beginning, but they would march forward together. Now go subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support for this movement.